Okay, so hi everyone. Welcome to my very first webinar. I must say I'm very excited to be here and just checking that everything is working fine. There is a 30 seconds delay between what I say and what you hear, so I'm just checking to see that that everything is working correctly. At the moment, you should see a screen with some copybooks and pencils saying homework tips for parents. So if you do see that in the on your screen, just maybe type yes in the questions, because you have a question box underneath the video screen. So if you do see that screen, could you please type yes for me and see that screen so that I know that it's actually live, and I can check that. Okay, I just would like to make sure that everything is okay before I start. So just give me a few seconds. I'm going to just check that quickly. Yes, okay, I see some yeses in the boxes, so meaning that you do see my screen, so that's perfect. Because I can't seem to be loading it from my computer, but I have like so many different screens that, okay, so if there is any issue that you can that you can't see the screen, or you're not seeing what I'm saying, then just type it in the question boxes, and then I'll try to check from time to time to come back to the question to make sure that that everything is going well. Okay, so let me go back to here. Right, so as I said, welcome. So I'm very, very happy to have you today. And I must say I'm a little bit nervous too, because this is my very first webinar, and I'm hoping that all the technical things will go smoothly, because sometimes it doesn't. So for my first webinar, I chose to talk about homework tips for you parents. And why did I choose that topic? Actually, this is because when I first started as a coach about a couple of years ago, I did a survey for parents, asking them about the issues they were having at school. And most of them, in most of the answers, homework were actually an issue that was coming back very often, and it actually was the main problem that that parents were having with their children. So I thought that might as well be a nice topic to talk about. So this is why I chose to talk about dealing with homework. So who am I actually to talk to you about that? Let me tell you a little bit more about myself. My name is, for those who don't know me, my name is Priscilla. I worked as a special needs teacher for about 12 years. I had mostly primary school students. There were students with dyslexia, dyscalculia, attention deficit, or just sometimes a learning difficulty without any learning impairment, but just sort of being slow at school or not being able to follow in class and things like that. I also did work with a few students who had a more severe handicap who couldn't be schooled, but that was a very few of them. Mostly they were, the primary school students. However, towards the end of working as a special needs teacher, I also worked with a few teenagers, so that was more secondary school curriculums that were out of the school system and that were homeschooled. So we were working either full-time or part-time and on like a whole school curriculum at that point. So while I was working with these students, at some point, I felt that I needed more tools and strategies. My way, because my studies were more psychology oriented rather than special needs, and my approach to children has always been on an emotional level and sort of more than on an academic level, sort of helping them feeling good about themselves and taking that route to help them with academic achievements. But at some point, I realized that I needed some more tools. I kind of felt the need and wanted some more tools and strategies. So I looked for a training and was very lucky to find a great coaching training. So now, a couple of years later, I have now fully transitioned from working with the children to now working with the parents and teachers and supporting them in working with their children and students. Okay, so enough about me. Just a few points to note before we start, some things to keep in mind. So for this webinar, we will be looking at things from what we can do as a parent, not so from a parent's perspective rather than from the school's perspective. So for example, the problematic of having too much homework, too little homework, homework that is too hard, homework that is too easy is not really our concern today. It's more about sort of how to handle the homework, no matter what homework we have. All these sort of problematics should be taken, I would advise you to sort of take it directly with the school. So we're not going to be looking at from that angle. Secondly, I don't have a magic wand. These tips that I'm going to give you today, they are mostly common sense. They are things that you have probably heard before in some form or another. There's no quick miracle solution to a problem. It's mainly sort of being consistent and sort of keep going at these things. So rather than thinking, oh, I know all that already, kind of, oh, I have already heard all this, I would like you to listen to these tips with another mindset. I would like you to maybe listen saying, okay, I know that, but do I really apply it at home? Is this something I'm doing? When I do that, what results do I get? And when I don't do that, what results do I get? So kind of having a curious mind about this whole sort of process and seeing how it can apply to you specifically. Also, for this webinar, I tried to go a little bit beyond the basic homework tips that you can easily find on the internet. So for example, if you Google homework tips on the internet right now, you probably will get some very practical things like setting a special space, no TV, having a special routine, etc., etc. So I'm going to try not to go into the practical things, but rather to have a little deeper understanding about the homework process. Okay, so for this homework tips webinar, I am going to be sharing with you 5 tips. The first one is presence. So what do I mean by presence? Actually, what I don't mean is that you need to be sitting next to your child throughout the whole time that he's doing homework. This is very dependent on the age of your child, the type of homework he's doing, the subject he's attending to, because obviously for young children, you're probably going to be sitting more with him and accompanying him throughout his homework. When he's growing older, you're going to let him be more independent about it. There are some subjects that he might like and that he would sort of breeze through it and not need any of your help, whereas there are some other subjects that he might really need you to be sitting next to him and helping him out and supporting him and giving him some tips and things like that. So being sort of sitting next to him and being there throughout the homework, this is dependent on other things. And the aim of homework is actually to get your child as independent as possible with his schoolwork. So it's not really wanted that you will be sitting right next to him. What I do mean, though, is that when you are available, you are fully available to him. Your whole focus is on your child. It sounds easy, but actually, in reality, it is quite difficult. Most of the time, we believe we are present, but we are not really. We are thinking about what we still need to prepare for dinner, about the nagging issue we had at work, about the conflict or the quarrel we are having with a friend, about the things we need to buy, about things that needs to be repaired or cleaned. I mean, we have like this constant flow of thoughts that is coming into our mind all the time, and sort of switching off from this and being totally present to our children is actually not something that is so easy to do. However, when we can be totally present, this is really powerful, because when we can do that, we can better deal with our children's emotions and with our own emotions too. For me, presence is equal resourcefulness. So let me give you a more like a concrete example so that you can understand what I mean. While I was preparing the notes for this talk, actually, a little while back, I thought, because knowing that I do try to be present lots of time with my own son, I don't succeed all the time. It's not always easy. I do get wrapped up also in my own thoughts and my own process. But I do work on it and I do try sort of to make it better. But while I was working on that, on the slides for this talk, it was all very much in my mind, and you know, it was, I thought, okay, well, you know, it's just I'm writing about this, so let me apply it 100%. And my son was starting his second term, I think it was, and it was his first day of school, so I thought, okay, I'll be totally present today and we'll see how it goes. And he came back, so we sat for, it was time for homework, so we sat for homework, and he had this, I think it was a English homework that he had to do. I can't remember exactly what it was, but it was something about finding the contrary of words or something like that, like pretty, ugly, and things like that. So something that was well within the range of things that he could do. So I thought, okay, well, that's fine. Looks like something that he can handle. So I'll let him, I did ask him, I said, you know, like, is that okay? Do you know what to do? And yeah, he said, no, it's fine, no problem. So he started attending his homework. And to be completely present, I didn't want to sort of be sitting next to him, as I was saying, but I wanted to be sort of close by and very present, sort of not involved into my task where I couldn't get out of it quickly. So I had just taken a book, and it was for work, and I was just taking some notes, but something that I knew that I could very quickly attend to and focus on him if he needed me. And sure enough, after a couple of, I think he had answered like, I don't know, 3, 4 or 5 sentences. And so he checked with me and he says, well, Mom, is it okay? Am I doing good? Is that okay? So I checked and I saw that he actually had answered his sentences right. It was all correct. The only thing that I was not sure about was that the question was requesting a full sentence, and he had only written the one word, the word that changed. So I pointed this out to him. I said, well, it seems like the question is requesting you to write the whole sentence and not only one word. Right at that moment, that's when I could see, like first of all, in his face, it just changed. And because writing is not the strong suit for my son. He doesn't really like it. He doesn't enjoy it that much. And so first of all, having it, well, it was not wrong in a sense, but for him it was very much wrong. So it meant that he had to erase it and start over again. So for him, that was like he was crushed. So as if this was not enough, he looked at the whole page and he realized that there were 15 of these sentences that he would have to rewrite, which felt for him like the end of the world. So at that point, he started getting frustrated and moaning and being sort of getting into that place, when you have children, getting into that place where he's not really a happy camper, and it's like this homework is not happening type of thing. And at that moment, that's when I felt, like right now, I need to be very present. And that's what I did. I stayed present with him, with his emotions. We tried to work things out. We tried to find some solution. I suggested something, he didn't like it. He sort of, we talked about it, and actually it took us it took us a little while, but in 5 to 10 minutes, it was actually solved. He had found a solution that he was happy with. We did take we took some breaks in between and things like that. And in no time, the actual 15 sentences were written and done with. The thing is, because I've been through this before, where I haven't been as present, I know that this very situation where he got a little bit emotional about it, this could have escalated into something which was much more difficult to deal with. It could have been, if had I not been present, I could have been more frustrated myself and sort of being taken by my own thoughts and say things like, oh, come on, you can do it, or be a little bit more impatient, which would lead to him also being more frustrated and more angry. And usually that's how things escalate. And at the worst, I've had him retreating into his room, crying, and things like that. So being present and sort of completely focused on our children actually helps us get these emotional resources that we have inside ourselves to be able to deal with and help them deal what they are going through around their emotions with homework. So that was my first tip. I hope it was clear. I'm just going to quickly go back to the questions and see if you have any more comments. I know there is a delay, so I will not wait for too long, because otherwise we might go well over the time. So I'm just going to carry on and keep coming back and checking when I can. So my second tip is about expectations and demands. So this comes mostly from observations that I've made while working with children. I am not saying that they are universal, only that this has been true for me while working with children. So this is things that I have observed, and so I'm very open to hearing if others have had different experiences than me, and I'm also very open to experiencing new things or different things in the future. But so far, with the children I've worked with, this is mostly what I have experienced. So some quick definition before we move forward. What do I mean by expectations and demands? So expectations, for me, they are things that we believe our children can achieve. Whereas the demands, they are things that we require or we ask directly from them. We ask our children sort of directly. That will be the demands. Let me just give you a quick example. For example, a parent might believe or expect that his child can sit down for homework for 30 minutes without getting up and do the whole sort of process. I mean, he would expect, he knows that his child is able to do that, but he might not necessarily require or demand that his child do so. So he might sort of, if a child after 10 minutes goes up to fetch a glass of water, he might be fine with it, even though he knows and expects that should he request it, his child would be totally able to do that. So the first thing that is important in relation to expectations and demand is actually to be aware and conscious of where we stand in relation to our children and the results we are getting as from the way we function. There is no should or shouldn't, in my opinion. It's more about sort of being curious of how we do things, and from there, understanding that we get certain results that might sort of be impacted from our way of functioning. So it's more like the key is more to be conscious about it. Okay. So we are going to be looking at them in terms of risks and opportunities. So let me start with the top left rectangle here, where parents have high expectations of what their children can do and also high demands. So obviously, when there is a high expectations, high demands way of functioning, one opportunity would be that the children perform well and have a high performance in their achievements. So let me just stop and pause quickly before I carry on with the opportunities and risks. This way of functioning, it can be the same across all the areas of a child's life, but it can also be very different depending on the area. Like some parents might have high expectations, high demands in the children's academic results, for example, but function completely differently in the sports arena, for example. So it might depending on the areas of life of a child, obviously. So yeah, as I was saying, like here, when there is a high expectation, high demand way of functioning, so one opportunity is that you do get high performance from your child or your children. A risk that I see, though, is that they mostly rely on external motivation to provide results, because they have this habit of being pushed all the time and the demands are so high that they sort of, they keep on relying on people pushing them to be able to perform. So this would be the risk of this way of functioning, in my opinion. So I didn't quite put it as an opportunity or a risk, because to me, it's a little bit of both. If I had to choose, I think I would put it more in the risk factor than an opportunity, though. Is what I see often is that also parents who have high expectations and high demands of their children, the children are very much of a perfectionist also. They want to do it like really, really right. And why I put it in the risk rather than opportunities is that usually sort of being a perfectionist, it can hinder you and it can sort of prevent you of doing things rather than going for it and trying things. And because there is like the fear of failure gets so high that it's difficult to then attend to the task. Like if I'm not good, then I'd rather not do it type of way of thinking. So this is something to be careful about also. So let's move to the bottom right sort of rectangle with parents having low expectations and low demands of their children. So here, what I have observed is that, well, obviously the risk is that you get a low achiever, because I mean the parents don't expect much from the child. They're not demanding much either. So there's no sort of reason for the child to perform well. So there's kind of a low achiever or lower achievement that he could get. An opportunity, though, that I have seen in some children, not many, not often, but sometimes it does happen in that frame of functioning, is that you get these children who have a fighter frame of mind. Kind of, okay, you don't believe in me, you don't believe I can do that, well, I'll show you. I'll just prove you wrong. And these children actually sort of plow in and get things done and do achieve things quite nicely. So it does happen. It is an opportunity, even though I have not seen it too often, though. Okay, so now if we move to the low expectations and high demands. So when parents have low expectations of what their children can do, but they still have high demands, what I have observed is that you can get, the risk is that you can get children with very low self-esteem. It's like you're pushing him to do something, but you're not actually believing, like they kind of get the feeling that you're not actually believing that they can do it. So they don't really feel themselves that they are worth being able to doing that. So low self-esteem. Also, another risk that I see there is that in some children you can get some resistance, and they don't really want to sort of they resist you sort of demanding such high performance of them, because they actually reflect what you're believing that they can do. And yeah, they really don't think that they can achieve so much, so they are very much resisting it. One opportunity that I have seen, though, is that you can get hard workers also. It may happen. So for example, I have actually somebody that I know pretty well, like a close friend, that she didn't really have like very low expectation of what her children could do, but it was more, I mean, her expectations were more kind of, she would say things like, oh, well, he's not as intelligent as other children, or he has his limitations, or, I mean, she was always talking about her child in these kind of words, but still pushing him and still sort of requesting quite highly of him. And this child actually sort of was a real hard worker. I mean, he would, for his exams, like he would, I would say, a little bit buy into the limitations, but at the same time, he would work really hard. I mean, he would like, and all that he has achieved today is really sort of, he has earned it through the hard work that he has done. So that could be an opportunity of this way of functioning. So lastly, we'll go to the high expectations and low demands. So when parents have high expectations of what their children can do, but don't necessarily have high demands. I mean, they don't require the child to do as much. What I've seen is that you get some long-term internal motivation. That's an opportunity that you can have because, I mean, there's like no one to actually push them that much. So when they achieve things, then they kind of owe it to themselves and they have to sort of strive to get their own motivation going. One risk that I do see here, though, it is that he doesn't achieve his full potential. Like that children could do so much more, but because they are not pushed and pushed and pushed, then they sort of they don't get to what they could, where they pushed a little bit harder. Another opportunity that I did see here, though, a little bit like the fighter frame of mind that we saw on the low expectation, low demands area, is that you do sometimes you can receive more by asking less. It's kind of the same thing where the children think, well, you're only like asking this of me, but I can do that and that and that, and they actually give more than you are asking for. So that can happen. So mostly, as I said at the beginning, it is sort of more helpful to be aware of the way we are functioning with our children. And sometimes, if we're meeting with resistance or if we're meeting with like a child who doesn't want to attend any work or sort of low academic results, we can also think of, okay, well, what are my expectations here? What are my demands? So how am I functioning, and what is am I having results in relation to the way I'm sort of the things I'm demanding of him or the things I'm expecting of him? And sometimes you can also play with these expectations and demands and see if you get different results from them also. Because lots of time when I see children, for example, resist homework or having a hard time sort of pushing past some limitations that they think that they have, it might be related to the expectations and demands. So let me give you also here a quick concrete example from my own life again. Because again, while I was doing this, because, like all these ideas, I would say, these are things that I was experiencing and seeing while I was working with children, but I had never actually gone and put it like on paper and sorted through the ideas. So while I was preparing the slides, I had like this aha moment because I realized something that was from my own life. My son, actually, from a very, very young age, I kind of realized that he was not the writing kind of child. I mean, he didn't like, he would rather, even in kindergarten, he would rather do puzzles and do like build blocks or things like that. He didn't like drawing. He didn't like writing. He didn't like, coloring was like a nightmare for him. So I've never, my expectations, I was kind of here in the low expectations, low demands when he got to anything having to do with writing, because to me, he was still young. And even in his first and second years of school, when the teachers' expectations were actually quite high with the handwriting and all that, my own expectations were not that high because I knew he didn't like that. And actually my demands also was not that high. I didn't push him to do much better, because for me, as long as I could understand what he was writing, that was fine with me. I didn't sort of need this sort of perfectly formed letters and things like that. So I was functioning here rather much sort of in a low expectations, low demands frame of mind. And while doing this presentation, what I realized was that actually now he is growing up and he's now in year 3. And writing is no longer about handwriting anymore. It's more about creative writing, about producing a story, about like writing what you're thinking about. So it's much more about the creativity, but because he doesn't like it and because I had functioned in that way for so long, I sort of kept being here. Whereas if I want him maybe to achieve a little better or to do a little more, I should probably change my either my expectations or my demands and push him a little harder, or believe that he can, because I now have changed my expectations, and I do know that he can do much better than he's doing now, and he's kind of limited because he just doesn't like it and doesn't feel sort of a big expectations from me. So just to say that, just sometimes sort of shifting our approach can have an impact on what our children are giving us in terms of academic results also. And most of it, I must say, in the way of functioning is sort of goes along our values and our beliefs of what is important in life. You will see many, for example, very high achievers and competitive people who might be more on the high expectation, high demands way of functioning, whereas more laid back or more sort of people who are about sort of success being more about happiness than about sort of financial achievement would be maybe more on the lower part of a spectrum. So it might depends. It very much depends according to who we are also. Okay, so I hope that was clear. So let's move on now to the third tip. So tip number 3, the urge to control. So this is something that I see very, very, very often regarding homework with the parents I work with. So homework and homework time does not need to be perfect. Let me repeat that again because it's important. Homework does not need to be perfect. The more we bring in control and the need for perfection, the more tension you are bringing to the table. And as much as you can control events and things, you will never, ever be able to completely control another human being. So when you try to control every aspect of homework, including your child, this usually doesn't go very well. And I promise you, your children, they know exactly how to push your buttons to trigger you also. So when they feel like that there's like a lot of control around them, they know exactly how to sort of shift things around. So sometimes it is a good thing to just relax a little and give back the control to your child on some simple things. When we do homework, I usually, even though I would much prefer that my child does his exercise first and then we go on to the reading, because I know that the reading is more relaxed and it's sort of, we can do it even if it's late at night and things like that. If sometimes I will give him the choice, and sometimes when he chooses the reading first, I go along with it, even though it might not be my preference. But I believe that, it's just giving him a little bit of control of how the process is going is actually helping being more relaxed about it. What parents should control for me or check is that the homework is actually being done. But that is about it. There's not much else for me. Like even I will send back my child's homework with mistakes in at times. Because, I mean, unless I can see, like, for example, if he's doing homework and the whole thing is wrong and I kind of feel that he hasn't understood the concept, or he has sort of just missed a little something, then I'll explain and we'll go through it again. But if I can see that mostly he's understood the whole thing, but there's like one or two mistakes, sometimes I don't even point it out to him. I just send it back, because homework is also a benchmark for the teachers to understand what the child can do or cannot do on his own. So it's also a good thing that the teachers can see what he has been able to do. Homework time also doesn't need to be perfect, because I see lots of parents sort of, this homework routine has to be in a certain way, and it's very difficult for them to deviate from that sort of way of doing things. For example, sometimes, let's say dad is coming home early one day and wants to play soccer with the children, but it's homework time, or he wants to take them to the beach or to the park, and then he'll be back late and homework will be done like so much later, and sort of disturbing the whole afternoon routine. So for some parents, it's very difficult to handle. Whereas I'm not saying that it should be every day, but from time to time, it's actually so much better for a child to go and play soccer at the park or go to the beach a little bit, even if the homework is done a little bit quicker or not as well as it should be once in a while. But I mean, life is happening at the same time, and life to me is more important than just doing the homework like on this sort of machine type way. So just bringing in just sort of some being relaxed and being cool about it, and sometimes doing things a little bit differently, that is totally okay. Just sort of bringing some lightness to the process. And bringing this lightness, actually, it often prevents many of the issues that we meet during the homework, because sometimes like the issues are just sort of a building up of sort of this rigid process that the child cannot take anymore. So I have an example. When I was working at a school of a child whose mom was like that, very, very controlling about the homework. And actually, that child I was not seeing that child in special needs, but I was doing a class observation one day for another child in a classroom. And while I was there, obviously I was, like seeing how that one particular child was fitting in the classroom, but I was also sort of looking around and helping a little bit and sort of seeing what was going on in the classroom. And I noticed this child who was very much daydreaming. I mean, she barely touched her sort of sheet, what she was supposed to be working on. She would only do things when the teacher would attend to her, but otherwise she escaped in like doing totally different things. But that was not a child that I was having in special needs. So afterwards, when I met with a teacher for a debrief, I asked her and I said, well, what's the story about that child? What is happening there? And because I mean, obviously academically she is probably doing fine because I'm not seeing her. And she says, yeah, no, her work is fine. She's on track. She's okay. But yeah, I mean, in the classroom she can like totally disconnect. And that's when the teacher actually told me that her mom is actually a teacher. She was a secondary school teacher, but I mean, she had like this very sort of teacher frame of mind where she was very, very rigid about the homework at home. And so the teacher was telling me that sometimes when the mom was doing homework with her child, she would erase like up to 5 or 10 times, like one sentence, until it was perfectly written as the mom was expecting it. So, and she would do that for every single sentence for the homework. So homework was like this process where she had like total control, and it was like the child was really expected to perform at a very high level. So, well, needless to say, when that child got to the classroom, that was like her way of breathing a little bit and escaping that whole rigid process. And even though academically she was doing well, she was not really sort of participating or gaining as much as she could from the classroom process just because of that. Okay, so let's move on to tip number 4, turning homework time into a fun time. And yes, homework can be fun. So how do you turn homework into a fun time? So first of all, watch your own attitude towards homework. I see many parents who come to me, and when they come to me, it's like, oh, homework, this is such a bore, and this is like, so, I mean, and their own views of homework is this like, terrible, terrible moment. And this is probably the things that they say to their children too. So obviously, this is sort of the model that they are giving to their children about what homework should be like also. So if it is a chore for you, it is going to be a chore for your child. Children learn best by modeling. So if you want your child to tackle homework gracefully, first you have to be cool about it yourself in the first place. With my son, in his very first week of school, I started playing loving homework. So it was, I remember on his very first day, he came, we were coming back from the school in the car, and I said, so how many homework do you have today? Do you have 5 homeworks to do? And obviously that was his first day. I mean, he was in year 1, so I knew perfectly well that there was no homework probably for that day. And so obviously he said no. I said, oh, so did you have 10 homework? And he said, no. So I said, oh, really? So you have 3 homework? He said, no. I'm like, but how many homework do you have? And he said, I don't have any homework. And I was like, oh, really? So, but that was a game that we played very often. So I kind of played loving homework. Well, during the first year, he might have bought into it a little bit. Now, obviously, but very quickly, he kind of knew I was kidding and playing around, because I also have my days where I rush through homework and I don't really want to do homework either. So he kind of knows that I don't really love homework all that much, but just playing that game with him is sort of getting him into the habit of associating the homework time with something that is fun and that we look forward to. So your own attitude matters also. Something else that you can do is to bring in learning games into the homework. Games for me are the best route for learning. I've always used them with all the children I've worked with, from, I promise you, 1-year-old to 16-year-olds. And I can tell you, even the teenagers at 16, they loved playing games, even though it was learning games and games that they knew would sort of be geared towards learning, but they loved playing games. Obviously, you do adapt the games to the age so that it is still challenging, so that it is still sort of something that will help them. You see, homework is boring. Games are fun, they are challenging, they are exciting. And also by playing with your children, you are also modeling a lot. You are also writing, you are also answering questions, you're also figuring out the answers. So it's just sort of a way of modeling things for him also. I just will pause here because I saw that there was a question that was asked here Isabel is asking, my son loves maths but does not like to write. How do I get him to love writing? Well, this is exactly the kind of things of a kind of problem where I would use games with him and playing with him also, because lots of time we want to help them love something while we don't really do it. It's not like you have to love it, but I mean, I'm okay. I've been to school already and I don't need to be doing the writing. So playing games, I used to, for example, for writing, I used to play games with children where we would write a story sort of and then hide part of it, and then sort of the other one would carry on, and then you hide part of it, you keep only the end and the other one, and things like that, so that it's kind of a game, and then you read the whole passage and it's all silly and it's all kind of stupid, but there's lots of writing that has been done in the meanwhile. Some other games that I did with writing is that we would have a timer, and me and the child, we would have a whiteboard, and then we would write things, and we would have like sort of 1 minute, and we had to write a whole sentence with maybe like 4 nouns and 3 verbs and 2 adjectives, for example. And for each noun or verbs or adjective, we would get points. Obviously, because I was a teacher and kind of you being the adult and knowing a little bit more, you can have some handicap or some way to make the thing like the game more like fairer. But seeing like your child seeing you struggle to find the nouns, to like struggle to find sentences, and playing with them and writing with them, that is actually a great way to help them love writing. And if it was the contrary, like if you like, for children who like writing and who don't like math, there's also like loads of games where you can sort of encourage them and help them with what they are struggling with. Often though, when I do say just bring in some games to the homework time, the complaint that parents have is they say that, oh no, like how can I bring in some games where I already don't have enough time? Like homework is taking so long already. How can I bring in any learning games into that process? But the thing is, most of the time, when I have played games with children in the context of homework, it doesn't add up that much work time, because when homework takes time, mostly you will find that it is not about the child working. Most of the time is taken into the daydreaming, into the child not wanting to attend to the work, into the child getting up to get the glass of water, into the rubber that has fallen under the table that the child has to retrieve, and all the things that he's doing to escape the homework time, which is making the homework process longer one. Whereas I have found when you bring in the learning games, then he gets into a mindset like that he tackles the actual work much easier. He feels more confident about it. He's more willing to tackle the actual exercise afterwards. And obviously, it doesn't have to be every single homework too. Sometimes I only play games during homework with my son like every 2 weeks or so. I mean, sometimes not even. Sometimes it's more often. It depends when we have time. But just from time to time, bringing in these games just help him sort of associate the learning with something fun, with something that is enjoyable, with something that he likes, so that even though sometimes there's no games that we can bring in, the learning is still fun for him. The learning is still enjoyable. He's kind of keeping the same frame of mind for the working afterwards. So when you registered, I did send you the little booklet that I have about the tips about using game with homework. So that can give you some more tips of how you can incorporate some games into the homework. One thing to be careful about, though, is that the games, if you do play games, do not backfire, because that can happen, especially if you have a child who doesn't like losing. Although playing games when children don't like losing is a great way to help them with the losing part also, because I mean, life is part of, yeah, I mean, in life we are going to make mistakes, we're going to fail, we are going to lose, and that's a great way also to help them get the tools to sort of deal with the losing also. And make sure to only play games that is enjoyable to your child. And great thing is to be very clear on the rules and to put things in place and make sure. So it's like making sure that the games do work for you and your child. Okay, so I will just be checking that there is no more questions. If you do have a questions, don't hesitate to send them in. No, I'm okay. So I'm going to carry on with the last tip for today. So tip number 5, when homework is an ongoing issue, what I would encourage you to think about is homework the real problem? Because, yeah, when homework, what I have noticed is when homework is constantly a problem, it's always coming back, it's always like ongoing issue that is not getting resolved. If this is something to consider, like, is it the real problem? Isn't it covering up some other issues that is happening elsewhere? So, for example, things like coming home late and stressed by work, having regular fights and conflicts between the parents. It can be issues that the child might have elsewhere in his life, with friends, at school, with siblings, or dealing with a transition, moving country, moving houses, having a death in the family, even if it's grandparents. Just things like that might impact on how the child is reacting to things. It might also be skills that the child hasn't yet acquired to allow for smooth learning. It can be academic, it can be social skills. So these are things that could impact on the homework time and on the issues that you are having also. So that's it for the 5 tips. And before I wrap up, let me tell you about just one story that I had with a friend. A couple of years ago, a friend approached me, somebody I know very well, and she was saying, it's like this homework, this is terrible. I don't know what to do anymore. I mean, it's just getting worse and worse. It's actually terrible. This was at the time where I was not taking, I had started my training as a coach, and I was no longer taking any students sort of on a one-to-one basis at home, except for the teenagers that I still had, that I was homeschooling full-time. So I was not really, but as she was a close friend of mine, I told her, you know what, let me come. I'll come to your place, like during 1 week. I'll do homework and with your child, and let's just see. And then I can see what's the problem. So this is what I did. So the first day I arrived, and the child came and fetched his bag, and I actually applied exactly the tips that I'm telling you today. So this was a child that was probably, I can't remember exactly, but I think he was towards the end of primary school. He was probably sort of the year before last, or 1 year before that. So he was towards the end of, he was probably the year before last of primary school. So he was old enough to know what homework he had. So I arrived, and as I say, I applied exactly what I told you today. So I sat there, I was very present for him. I was there for that purpose. So I was focused on what he needed, and I was observing also sort of how he was doing things. I let him control the whole process. I asked him what he needed to do. I mean, he was old enough anyway to kind of know what he was supposed to be doing. So we went, I mean, he said, I need to do that. And I was there to support, but I didn't sort of pitch in and try to control everything. I did have sort of my expectations of what he could do. I mean, I did expect him to sort of be, because I knew the child and I knew sort of what he was able to. So I might not have like big expectations, but I kind of knew that he could do things, and I was a little bit pushing him, but not that much either. I was kind of letting him do his process. So we probably spent about an hour. Homework went fine. We kind of did the things, and that was it. I went back home, and then the next day, I came back. I came back to the house, to my friend's house, and as I was coming, I remember very clearly. I was driving up the driveway, and the mom and the child were sitting in the lounge under the veranda. And as I was getting out of a car, I saw the child just get up very quickly, like sort of seeing me arrive, get up and rush and run into the house, run straight past me into the house. And I'm like, okay. So I arrive, and I look at the mom, and I look at the mom and I see her. She's kind of having eyes wide open, her mouth completely open. She's staring straight in front of her, like as if she's seen a ghost. I'm like, okay, what's up? And she doesn't answer. She keeps like staring in front of her, gaping mouth. I'm like, now I'm getting worried. I'm like, hey, what's up? What's the problem? What happened? I'm like, okay, I'm like really getting worried at that point. And she looked at me and she said, well, he just got up and is running, saying, I'm going to get my homework. I'm going to get my homework. And as she was saying that, he was actually, like, that child was actually coming back with his bag, like quickly setting up and saying, okay, let's do homework, and like being like really happy about it. And she like I kind of smiled. I was relieved at that point, I must tell you. And the mom looked at me and she said, he's never done that before. Never, ever. It's like the first time I see him sort of wanting to do the homework. I'm like, okay. So same thing happened that day. I just did the homework with him during that day. And afterwards, while the child was doing his own thing, I just sat with the mom a little bit and we talked. And that's when, like, the things that we realized were that her way of sort of first of all trying to control the parts of a homework that he was doing, and secondly her expectations, because this mom had actually quite high expectations of what she thought her child could do. However, the message that she was getting through was one of very low expectation. She was saying things like, like, if you don't do that, you'll never be able to have a good school. You'll never be able to do that. You'll never be able to do this. And like her whole message was getting through in a very sort of low expectations of what the child would achieve. And obviously the child was resisting the whole process because of this whole control type thing, relationship that they were having. And all that I did was no magic powder or anything. I mean, I was just present. I didn't control anything. I just sort of went with the flow and was all relaxed about it. And actually, I didn't need to come back anymore during that week, because from that sort of realization, things went actually much better from then on. Okay, so we are about a little bit more than an hour, or about an hour, I think. So that were my 5 tips for today for the homework. I hope you enjoyed it. Before I leave, I have a few specials that I would that are only for the people who registered for this webinar. So even if you're not here live, it's still, as long as people registered, then they can have access to these specials. So I have a few specials for this webinar. First of all, I am in, sorry, I am in the process of opening up to working with overseas clients now. So I have a special giveaway for anyone who would like to work with me and who lives outside of Mauritius Island. So if you would like to have a chance to get get the free giveaway sessions, because that will be for one person, one overseas client, then you just send me an email. You just reply to one of the emails I sent you, and you enter you as a subject, or in the email, homework tips webinar special. And then from the entries, I will randomly pick someone who will get the giveaway sessions. So that will be so free giveaway sessions for one overseas client. Okay, so once you do that, I will probably give about, because the replay will be going live afterwards, I will probably give a few days, and I will then contact you personally to let you know if you have received the sessions, the giveaway sessions, as to let you know. Okay, so that will be the first special that I have for this webinar. The second one is that I'm launching a parents workshop. This will be a 2 to 3 hour workshop geared at better understanding the relationship you have with your child using the human needs framework. So if we go back to the tip number 5, where we asked, is homework the real problem? What I have seen also sometimes is that there is a clash between what the parents are needing and what the child are needing. So this workshop will actually can help in better understanding that relationship, but not only focusing on homework, it can focus on the whole relationship that you have with your child. This workshop is for a minimum of 5 participants and a maximum of 10 participants. So during this workshop, we will explore a challenge or an issue that you are encountering with your child in the light of Anthony Robbins' 6 human needs, in order to find new strategies, new vehicles, and new ways that you can deal with it. The workshop is available locally. If there is demand, I might make it also available as an online group for overseas participants. However, if I do that, I will see from the demand, but if I do that, it will probably be a maximum of 5 if it is to be online. So yeah. But in person, that will be 5 to 10 participants. So here in Mauritius, locally, it will be up to 10 participants. You can arrange a group of friends and connections, so you can contact me as a group already, or you can also contact me as an individual, and I will then organize to put you into a said group. So if you are interested in that workshop, you can email me at priscillek@priscillekinick.com, or reply to any of the emails I sent you, all the reminders and all that, requesting for more details, and I can send you some more details about that workshop. So anyone who has signed up and registered for this webinar will receive a 10% discount on that parents workshop that I'm launching. Okay, so yeah, we've been just over an hour. It was such a pleasure to be with you today. I was very happy to do this webinar with you. I do hope that you were able to see the slides and that everything went well, because I was not able to actually check everything while I was presenting it. So I'm crossing fingers that everything went well on all aspects of it. So thank you so much for being with me today. I was very, very happy to have you, and hopefully I'll see you around. Bye.